Everyone wants to live an inspired life, yet so many people search for happiness following the footsteps of peers and taking advice from people who have different values and outcomes to which they're searching. There are people born into wealth, graduated from the best universities in the world, and there are people who have none of that and yet are living extraordinary lives full of fulfillment and reward. The purpose of this podcast is to share insights and strategies that allow you to question the status quo and think freely, so you can design your life and be who you want to be. We get one life. Time is our most valuable asset. I believe that when we're free and able to focus on meaningful work, we become better human beings. This is Always Free, and I'm your host, Jason Greystone.
Welcome to the leading podcast for financial empowerment and wealth creation. Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can connect with Jason on social media and subscribe to the Jason Greystone YouTube channel for weekly videos. Don't forget to also subscribe to the weekly newsletter to receive frequent educational content and action steps to help you design your life so you can be who you want to be. For news on all future events and updates, go to jasongreystone.com.
Alright guys, welcome back to the podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed the last episode when I was speaking about kind of tracking what you're spending, where your leaking bucket is, as I say, and having to think about how you can optimize those expenses. So whether that's through, self-development, reading books, Audible, courses, masterminds, boot camps, mentors, coaches, that kind of thing. And track that stuff, write that stuff down as well. And if maybe you need to save a little bit more to afford a certain thing, and you can go and do that. My private clients that I work with, I give an actual sheet to, and they can actually fill that thing in to track how much they need to get to where they want to be if they're working on self-development, if they need a mastermind. And it almost incentivizes them to save a little bit more, track a little bit more, be a bit tighter with the frivolous spending and put it into self-development, because as I said last week, there's that intangible growth and intangible income, which I'm going to go through a bit later on. So this week I really wanted to just talk about kind of the next step, but firstly I just want to take you back a little bit to where I was before I started the business, because obviously I told you guys already that I was fascinated with Pareto's Law and kind of figuring out how I could maximize my income through minimum output. And I had this whole plan mapped out for financial independence. And obviously the first thing I figured out was I needed to kind of be a bit less frivolous with my spending, and I needed to save some money and spend it the right way. And the way that I got into that, the reason I realized that is because I used to have these kind of periods in my life where I was about 19, 20 years old, and we'd be going out to the clubs and blowing a load of money, right? And we would do like 200, 300 pounds in a weekend. And for a young lad, it's pretty much my entire week's wages, if not more. And I would always feel depressed, like I would feel really down because I'd spent so much money, and I'd obviously drained the capital that was in my bank account, my liquidity, if you like, and I didn't feel good about it. I felt like I was a bit in survival mode. I felt like I had to go out and do some overtime and kind of put some hours in and really get my head down and not spend any money at all. And what would happen is I'd then go out to work, and I wouldn't go out for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and I'd just do some overtime, do some weekends, get some more money in, and I'd feel good because I'd look at my bank account and it would be well over that kind of threshold that made me feel good. Everyone's got this kind of level in their bank called your financial thermostat, that level that you like to get to, and you never like to dip below. And whenever you do dip below, you kind of feel a bit poor and a bit scarce, and you try and do some overtime and get that money back. And then when you go, there's also an upper level of that, and when you go over that level, you kind of feel a bit frivolous, you feel a bit good, and you're a bit splash cash, and then until you dip back into that zone. And there's this zone that you stay within your bank. In fact, if you go and print your bank statement out now, you'll probably find that there's a very similar pattern in terms of how the money goes in and out of your account. And if you printed a graph off to show the overview of your account, you'll probably find that the money comes in, goes above your threshold, you dip it back in, and then slowly you drain it, it goes back into the red zone, and then you get paid again, it goes back up, and it's kind of this sideways move between what I call this band or this threshold of upper and lower limits. And it's very, very common. It's very common. I see it all the time. So I kind of had that, and I would find that my emotions were actually being played upon depending on whether I had cash in the bank or if I didn't have cash in the bank. And what would happen is when I had lots of, when I'd been working hard and working, I had loads of money in the bank, I felt good. And then when I would blow the money and go out and spend the money, I'd feel a bit worse. I'd feel terrible. So I kind of figured out that actually I need to, I started asking myself, why am I feeling this way? What is it? Why do I feel like this? And it all boiled down to the fact that when we don't have cash in the bank, our brain starts to go into that survival mode, which I mentioned last week. That's why I said carry cash. That helps, right? But your brain goes into this survival mode, and the reason being is because we don't have enough cash to see us into the future. The less you can buy into the future, the more your survival brain kicks in. And obviously, if you're going out and blowing a load of money in the club or the parties, or, just blowing money left, right, and center, you're going to dip into your liquidity, dip into your cash, become, you're going to be less liquid, you're going to have less capital in the bank and less of a buffer. Therefore, you're going to feel bad. And it's as simple as that. Simple as that. So where I was in life at that time, I was surrounded by my friends who, I had met around college time, okay? And we started when I was about 16, and we used to go out all the time. We used to go out into a place called Sutton in Surrey, and there was a bar. I mean, I'll tell you, I used to go out to, on a Monday would probably be the only day I didn't go out, and then Tuesday there was this thing called 123, which was £1.23 to get into this place called the Lytton Tree, and it was £1.23 per drink, and they were serving up 16, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, right? And I would go there on a Tuesday. Wednesday we would go to this place called the ISO Bar, which is then went on to become a Rat and Parrot. Great names. But they were serving beer for 50 pence per pint to 16, 17-year-olds, right? 16, 17-year-olds, 50p per pint. And then Thursday, we would then head up to a place on Purley Way in Croydon called Atlantis, this big club. We'd have to get the bus there, all jump off the bus into this club, and they would do something special there on a Thursday night, or we would go to this club called the Blue Orchid in Croydon. And if you're listening to this and you're from Croydon, if you know, right? And then obviously Friday night I'd be out in the bars, Saturday night I'd be out in the club, and then Sunday there'd be a karaoke bar up in a place called North Cheam, which was up the road from me, called the Cavern. And we used to go up and we used to sing in the karaoke bar and obviously have drinks and all the rest of it. And then Monday would be the only day that I didn't go out. And I was around this group of friends, and I love them dearly. Still great friends with them today. But I realised that if I was to break out of this and really start taking control of my finances, I would need to sacrifice some of this stuff. So I went to my mates and I said, look, I can't do this too much more. I really can't be spending this much money out in these places. I've got this plan. I want to be financially independent. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And they're all kind of like, yeah. Just come out for one more beer. And one of my mates, Steve, his dad, he said, look, Jay's got his head screwed on. He wants to go and do his thing. Be respectful, that he doesn't want to go out, drinking and spending money on drink. And some people do want to do that. And, my friend Steve, he still loves doing that and he's happy doing that. And when we meet up, we have a great time, we have a great laugh. We meet up regularly now. But I needed to break away and sacrifice that for just a little while whilst I got my head in order. And if anyone knows me who's listening to this, you'll know that I took a drastic action and I completely moved town. I moved about 20 miles away from where everyone lived. I moved to a little town called Leatherhead. And that was drastic action, but the reason I did that was to get away from the crowd, get away from that habit so I wouldn't be able to do that. So me and my girlfriend, I wasn't even married at that time, but we moved to Leatherhead. So we moved to Leatherhead and completely got away from that crowd. The reason I did that was to build this buffer. So what I want to talk about a little bit now is just this buffer of cash, because when you have a buffer of cash, you can make better decisions. So not only in your business, but you make better decisions in life. You start to have, you know that you can survive the immediate future. You've got this cash cushion that then allows you to feel good and kind of not make any decisions out of scarcity or desperation. You can pick and choose a bit easier. If someone comes to you with an opportunity, you're not in desperation. It's like, yeah, I'll think about it kind of thing. And you can just see clearer. You can see clearer. When we haven't got money, when we've got money problems, you kind of lose, it takes the luster out of life. It's just, you're just thinking day to day. You can only see 2 inches in front of your face. Whereas if you've got a nice cash buffer and you know that you can live for 2, 3, 4 months into the future, if you lost your income today, it helps to keep you much calmer. So what I did is I went about saving around 3 to 6 months. I was trying to get to 3 months, but I highly recommend you aim for 3 to 6 months, 6 months ideally. And even better, further down the line, you want to have 12 months. But what we're talking about here is living expenses. Okay, so I'm not talking about, but I need my Domino's pizza delivery with, the extra bottles of Tango and, garlic breads every now and then. I'm talking about living expenses. So when you did your tracker, when you went through your bank statement and you looked at everything you were spending, I asked you to categorize those, and when you categorize them, I wanted them in living expenses. So that means your shelter, your food, your basic food that you need, your baseline food kind of thing, your day-to-day food, your water, and just your living expenses, your cleaning products, that kind of thing. Not my Louis Vuitton pair of shoes every now and then, not that kind of stuff, just to live. And take that figure, add that figure all up, and what you want to do is you want to aim to save around 3 to 6 months minimum as a buffer, okay? And when you have that sitting in cash in your bank account, that allows you to think a lot more clearer. It allows you to, as I say, make better decisions. It allows you to be more efficient at work because you can see a bigger picture. You're not looking at getting some overtime. You're not looking at, just kind of, trying to make day to day. You're looking holistically. You raise up and you can see things from a bird's eye view much better. And it allows you to also be more caring, more loving. So if you are providing a service, if you're dealing with customers at work, you might be frustrated because you're thinking, if this person doesn't buy this thing, I'm not going to get the commission, or I might get the sack, or I won't get paid, and that's going to come across when you're talking to those people. Whereas if you've got a big cash buffer in the bank where it covers your living expenses for 3 months, all of a sudden, your care and love is portrayed onto whoever you're dealing with in your job. So instead of, come on, mister, I need this sale, it's, well, what is your problems? What are your problems? How can we make this better for you? Because you're not thinking about getting the cash. You're thinking about serving the person much more. So, and also you're thinking about serving your boss. If you've got a job, you're serving the boss better. You're serving the boss. You're not just, you pay me, I need money, I need this, I need that. It's how can I make this business better? That's how you start to think. That's how you start to think when you've got a cash buffer. So that's what I needed to do, right? So I went all the way to Leatherhead. I drove, we drove 20 miles, moved into the area. We moved into Leatherhead and we set up shop there, and that was it. I didn't look back. Now, obviously, when I set up shop in Leatherhead, I still had a job, right? I was still working in a job, and it was very close to when I started up my business, because as I explained before, it wasn't in the place long before I decided to start my business, but I still was at a job when I moved to Leatherhead. So the next thing I set about doing was I figured that if I could build a cash buffer, which I was doing well at because I stopped going out drinks and parties and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, the next step is to kind of keep this momentum going. So I thought, well, if I can keep building this buffer, I can, I can think even clearer, and it's going to set me up. It's going to give me some leeway when I start a business and all that kind of thing. What I went about doing is I decided that every time that I got paid from my job, I was going to split up my income. And the way that I was going to split it was into 3 accounts. Now, I want you to think about this like a tax, because most people, when they get paid, the tax comes out, the employer takes the tax out, okay, and you don't even see it, so you're not too annoyed about it. It's gone, right? Until you get your pay slip, and then you look at the pay slip and you think, bloody hell, like, why do I even come to work, right? And you're looking at how much tax was taken off, and you're thinking, damn the tax man. But you moan about it, and then you carry on, you do the same thing, and the tax is deducted before it hits your account. What I want you to think about is kind of your financial independence tax, and that's where I went about setting up these 3 different accounts. Now today, I've got about 50 bank accounts, and I'm going to be sharing with you the entire structure over the series of this podcast. But initially, I just set up 3 bank accounts. So I knew what my living expenses were. So what I wanted to do was every time I got paid, I wanted my income, my post-tax income, because my employers took care of that, to be divvied up into 3 different accounts. One account was for my living expenses. So I had that figure. I went to my bank and I said, right, I need this account called living expenses, and I need every time on the 1st of the month I get paid. So I want on the 3rd of the month, I want the cash to be divvied into, or I want this amount to be divvied into this account. And they said, that's fine, that's absolutely fine. And I said, well, can I set up more? And they said, of course you can, so you can have how many bank accounts you like. And I said, right, well, I want another bank account, okay, and this one is going to be my savings account, and I want 10% of my income to get divvied off into that account automatically as I get paid. And I said, as soon as I get paid on the 1st of the month, within 2 days, I want this shaved off 10%, which is this amount. Obviously, I had to give her an amount. And at the time, I could do that because I knew what my income was, and I wasn't going to get a pay rise and probably until 6 months, 8 months down the line, because that's just how it is when you work for someone. So I gave her the income and I said, right, can we initially set it up at this much? 10%, worked out for about 10% of my income. And I said, every time I get paid, I want the living expenses to go into that account, which was about, I think it was about £1,500 at the time. And I said, right, I want 10% to go into this account, which was however much it was at the time. And one final account, which was this development account. And I said, right, I've optimized my expenses and I've worked out that I saved about 10%. So I want to put 10% of my income into this development account as well. And what I wanted to do was build up this development account and just have an account dedicated for webinars, courses, mentorships, coaches, masterminds, boot camps and all that kind of thing, books. You guys know, I've told you before, I've read over 600 books. This is where it all started. I started just buying books out of that account. So I came out of the bank and I said, right, that's great. I've still got the job, but every time I get paid, I've got my living expenses, which I calculated, going into this account. And all of the bills for my living expenses were getting taken from that one account. I then had 10% going into a savings account, which just got left, okay? It was just left there. I did not invest it at that time. Shortly after I started investing it, and I'll talk about that a bit later, but that was just a savings account, and then a development account, a self-development account, which was to work on my brain, just my brain, because I knew that if I taxed myself and paid my brain, then I would be able to have this intangible income growth from what I learned, whether it was building skills, whether it was getting out of the job, whether it was starting my business, whether it was becoming more efficient, right? There's a saying, if you empty your pockets into your mind will fill your pockets. And it is so, so true. There's also a saying, the more you learn, the more you earn. That's only true if you apply what you've learned. So don't get fooled into that. I'm a big advocate of the more you earn, the more you learn, the more you earn. But if you just sat there and read a load of books and kept it all to yourself, you would not earn more money. It's about sharing what you've learned. It's about utilizing what you've learned and providing value, or building a skill. If it just sat in your head, it's not going to earn you any more money. Anyway, that's where I was with that. Okay, so I moved to Leatherhead, got the bank set up, started getting my income on track, taxing myself, and I was, I had the cash buffer, I was feeling good, and that is when it was time to start my business. And the reason I wanted to start a business was to go to that next step. And the next step was I had the buffer of money, I had the automated banking, and by the way, just before I go off that topic, automated banking is so underrated, okay? It's probably the most underrated wealth acceleration strategies on the planet. You never ever hear people talking about it. It doesn't sell very well. You don't see people saying, buy my wealth acceleration strategy. I'm going to teach you to automate your banking. It doesn't really sell, but it is very, very underrated. And I highly recommend it. So I had all that stuff done, had it done. The next thing I needed to do was to control my income. Because remember I said to you guys in the first episodes that I needed to be in control of my income, because I didn't want a pay rise every 6 months, every 12 months. I wanted a pay rise when I damn wanted a pay rise. I wanted to control the pay rise. I wanted to pay myself at least 10% more per year. And on top of that, I wanted to have the flexibility to go out and use my knowledge through my self-development account to serve and earn more money, like big lumps of money in one go, so it'd accelerate my journey to financial independence. I wanted to, because remember, every time I'm getting paid, it's that same portion going into each of those 3 accounts, or the 2 accounts, and plus my living expenses. So as long as I didn't raise my living expenses like most people do, I could really start to cook on gas. I could really start to accelerate this thing. So I wanted to control my income. That's why I started a business. And the reason I wanted to control my income through starting a business is because I saw so many people, trying to control stuff that they've got no control over, or worrying about stuff they've got no control over. Because when it comes to, financial independence, there's so many things that make up financial independence. It's very, it's quite complex, because as I've just been over, it's your income, it's your savings, but then there's your lifestyle, there's the inflation rate, income growth, your desired kind of lifestyle growth, your buffer percentages, as I just went through, your, returns on investments, if you've got investments. There's loads of different things that go into it. But most people seem to focus on things that they don't control. Like, we can't control the inflation rate in our country. What you can control is your income. Okay, so you can control how much income and your income growth that you get. So, for example, if you've got a job and you're getting this pay rise for kind of 3, 4, 5% per year, that's a very little pay rise, and you're probably just matching inflation, maybe just a little bit more. And it's just making it very, very difficult to get to a level of financial independence. So what you want to do is you want to be able to grow that income to much more than the inflation rate, 10% plus, in order to get to financial independence quicker. And when I tell people that you want to go for 10% plus, you want to have this big jump in income, they're thinking, well, how can I, 1.5x my income? How can I do that? That's impossible. And it's because they're thinking with the same mindset that got them where they are now. They're thinking, well, if I'm working 40 hours a week and I need to 1.5x that, well, I've got to now work 60 hours a week and that kind of thing. And it's just not true. That's the wrong way to think. And then the next thing you see people do is that's where they spin off and they start going, I need to earn passive income. I need to get some kind of passive income model going on. When really they could use what I call leveraged income. Now, there's a lot of difference between leveraged income and passive income, and I'm going to go into it a bit more detail. But if you are going to start a business, the big mistake most people fall into is they kind of start the business and they just end up creating a job. So they go from doing something they're really good at to then going into doing something they're really good at, but all of a sudden they've got to do taxes, payroll, legislation, they've got to do all this other paperwork, quoting, all this kind of stuff, and it's not what they're good at. And what they don't do is they underappreciate leveraged income. Now, leveraged income is where you do a job once and you build a system, or you make that job more efficient by building a system using software, technology, machinery, staff. You employ staff to do that job. Remember, the goal is to buy time, to get out. I said this last week, buying time. And most people go into a job and they think, I'm going to control my income. And what they do is they end up stressed and like basically on a hamster wheel, and they've got even less time, right? And they've created this business and then they're just so frustrated, and then they end up having a breakdown or something crazy. So what you want to do is you want to control your income, but you want to bear in mind that you don't want to put yourself into a job that you've created with a load more stress. What you want to think about early on is leveraged income. So it was always my intention to start employing people, but I certainly didn't have the mindset of how am I going to 1.5x my money if that means I've got to work 60 hours a week if I'm working 40 now. I didn't have that mindset. What I went into is I was saying, right, I'm gonna use leveraged income. I'm gonna leverage this business. I'm good at what I do, so I'm gonna create systems. I'm gonna employ staff on day one. So I employed my best friend Adam. He was I took a real gamble on employing Adam. He had no skills, and I had to basically teach him everything I knew. He had a lot of skills electrically, but he didn't have skills in the industry that I was in. And because I loved him so much, I said, right, we're just going to do this. I'm going to teach you everything I know, and you're going to be, I'm going to lean on you as much as possible. And later on down the road, the guy practically ran the business. And when we were up to kind of 17, a team of 17, I wasn't doing anything. He was running the thing. I had all the staff doing the thing, and the money was coming in, was doing 1.8, 2 million. And I literally wasn't lifting a finger. I was doing very little. And that was always the plan, leveraged income. And that's what you can control. I want you to think about that, because the reason I'm going into this on a bit of a tangent here is because people seem to think, well, if I'm going to control my income, I need to work more, or I need to do another job, and and that is rubbish. Like, it's just rubbish. That is the same mindset that will limit you, and you'll end up being very stressed, earning probably 100 grand a year. And I'll tell you, it's easier to make 200 grand a year than it is to make 100 grand a year. Because as I said, if you're earning 100 grand a year, you're still doing a lot of the work yourself. Unless you're very clever around building systems, you're still doing the work yourself. You want to pay people or systems or use technology. We've got abundance of technology these days. Better technology available to you now, or you're on the same level playing field as Coca-Cola, these massive corporations that have got the same technology. They've got the social medias, they've got the monthly subscription platforms that allow you to do your accounting and all that kind of stuff. Very, very, you're on a level playing field. So you want to utilize those to go and get that leveraged income. Make your job done once, video it, write it in a manual, get someone else to do it, and buy yourself out of there. Sacrifice the trinket, sacrifice the Rolex, pay someone to do your job and get out of the business. That's what I did. I wanted to control the business. I wanted to build a good business so that we could grow the income. I wanted to pay myself as much as possible. I wanted to get out of the business. So just to finish off today, guys, I just want you to think about this, right? So if you're thinking about growing your income and controlling your income, taking real control and growing your income, don't be asking yourself the same kind of mindset questions. You need to kind of break out of that mindset of what got you to where you are at the moment. And instead of thinking, I'll need a pay rise 1, 2, 3%, all you're going to end up doing, or if you're, climbing some kind of corporate ladder, all that's going to do is just keep you just ahead of inflation, and you're just going to work and work and work and work, and it's going to go nowhere. Don't worry about getting a little pay rise. Ask yourself this question: how can I double my income? How can I double my income this year? Ask yourself those kind of questions. What can I do to double my income? Find all the sources. Look at all the little jobs that you do to generate your income. Every single little job. Write it down on a whiteboard and ask yourself, how can I make that more efficient? How can I make that more efficient? Who could I pay to do that? Do I even need to do this? Is there technology that allows me to do this that I could pay for myself or get my business to pay for? Ask yourself the questions and you'll get the answers. So I'm going to leave it there. I went off on a bit of a tangent this week. I get a bit heated, but hopefully it's given you a few little light bulbs, a few little nuggets and a different way of thinking. Maybe go and set up your automated banking. Think about setting up that living expense account, the self-development account and the savings account. Get it all automated and let me know how you got on. And until next time, guys, have a great day, weekend, and I'll see you next week.
Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. For news on all future events and updates, go to jasongreystone.com.